specific impact on this US tariff scenario, we had estimated that if the Indian exports could actually could decline by around 3% or 3 to 3.5%, but the impact on GDP could be a little more. And in the extreme case, the impact on GDP, and I think that's why that was one of the decisions with the RBI reduced the GDP to 6.5% in April policy. It has kept it unchanged in the latest policy. So my sense is that if it is not resolved quickly, or even if we go with a 10% base tariff, there'll be some impact on the Indian exports, at least to USA. The impact may not be that significant.
Hello everyone, welcome to the Secretariat. Today we have with us Soumya Kanti Ghosh. He is Chief Economic Advisor to the State Bank of India Group. He is also member of the 16th Finance Commission. He's going to be joining the Economic Advisory Council to PM as member. Welcome Soumya, great to have you with us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Let's start with the Israel-Iran war and its impact that it could have on the global economy and on India. Can you throw some more light as to, do you think this is going to continue, or do you think it's going to be a temporary kind of a thing?
No, I think that this is a very pertinent question, and the unfortunate part is that this geopolitical conflict has actually dictated our macro themes for the last 3 years, I believe, because it all started with the conflict in the Middle East. Then there was the Russia war. Then there was also the conflict between India and Pakistan, and then also this current conflict, which is continuing with Israel and Iran. I think that the problem is that these geopolitical conflicts where somehow we're getting a control on it, because there was some talks of these things getting resolved. But there was some unfortunate incident also of counterattacks between Russia and Ukraine. I think some sort of not a full-fledged war, but it's almost equivalent to a full-fledged war. It is going to have an impact in the Middle East in terms of political stability. And of course, the most important point to note is that it will have an impact on the crude prices. The crude prices, as you know, were around $60 a barrel. Now it has moved closer to 75 before it has retracted. And of course, the global economic growth, which this year is already weighed down by the tensions of tariffs, could be impacted because of if this war is prolonged. But the important point to note is that I think the most important, definitive impact it could be had on the investor sentiment, because the more you have these conflicts, the more the investors become uncertain about the future, and then they need to take a call on whether to invest now or later. So I think that is going to be the most crucial decision for a country like India.
What about trade? We have seen there is a lot of uncertainty, the trade dynamics, and for our exporters, especially with the tariff threat from Trump, and now we have this war in the West Asian zone. So, what do you think is going to have? What do you think it's going to be like for our exporters?
No, I think in terms of our impact on exports, I think in April 2nd, when the US President Trump announced the 26% tariff, but I think after that it was postponed, and now we are going with the 10% baseline case of tariff. I understand that the negotiation between India and US are going on, and it could be, maybe if everything goes all right, there could be some sort of an agreement before July 9th, which is basically the date when this 3 months moratorium ends. Having said that, I think at that point of time when we had estimated the specific impact on this US tariff scenario, we had estimated that if the Indian exports could actually could decline by around 3% or 3 to 3.5%, but the impact on GDP could be a little more. And in the extreme case, the impact on GDP, and I think that's why that was one of the decisions with the RBI reduced the GDP to 6.5% in April policy. It has kept it unchanged in the latest policy. So my sense is that prolonged, if it is not resolved quickly, or even if we go with a 10% base tariff, there'll be some impact on the Indian exports, at least to USA. The impact may not be that significant, but what it is going to happen is that, again, the point which I was trying to harp into, I think it will create some sort of an uncertainty in the minds of the exporters also, because the more these wars are prolonged, and more these tariffs are negotiated, that will actually sometimes makes it difficult to arrive at a decision. But on an overall scale, I think I remember that even if suppose the tariff, if we agree on a tariff of around 15% or so, or for 20%, the impact on Indian exports to US was not going to be that significant. So that was the positive part. But the negative part, as I already explained, is the uncertainty which is already unleashed on us.
Now, you spoke about the crude oil prices, and of course, we know how a war kind of a situation in the West Asian countries will impact the global oil prices. Now, it's already escalating. Do you think it's going to further escalate, or you think it's the Indian economy will be able to sort of take that in its fold?
See, as $75 per barrel, I think it's still manageable. Even if it costs 80, it is manageable. And the important point to note is that as long as there is no impact on the consumer prices, basically, if there is no if there is no changes in the excise duty, I think that is not getting passed on to the consumer. But what it is going to result in is that it could actually result in a higher import bill and maybe a higher current account deficit. So while there may be some impact on the import bill and a higher current account deficit, and that is very important in times when the exports would actually, as you know, the export number has been released for the latest month, it shows a little bit of decline. So when there is pressure on imports, if there is also pressure on imports, that may have some amount of the current account deficit. But I think it's too early to take a call as of that, because I think at 75, crude prices are still manageable. And my sense is that this war, even if it is prolonged by another couple of weeks or so, I think after that there could be an impact on the crude prices, because the global economic growth prospects are not that bright this year. So crude prices are unlikely to be sustained at the current levels. So that's the positive part, but the negative part, as I have mentioned.
Any impact you see on inflation in India? Like you said, the consumer price is going to be more or less under control, but do you think inflation would become a cause for concern again?
No, I don't think inflation as of now is a cause of the worry. The last inflation print came in at 2.82%, and given the monsoon forecast and given the outlook on prices, I think the inflation could actually rapidly decline to close to 2% in the next 2 months. So basically, I am not too much worried about the inflation if there is no unforeseen shocks on the food inflation front. But my sense is that as of now, there is not too much to worry on inflation, if leaving aside any complete outside surprises.
And also, you said monsoon is also on track. There's no worry
Yes.
on the monsoon front.
Yes.
RBI dividend, and also there is expectation that the PSU dividend is also going to be quite a sizable amount. How do you think that is going to help in these uncertain times in terms of fiscal management and macroeconomic dynamics?
No, I think the important point to note about the RBI dividend is that actually it acts as a counter-cyclical fiscal buffer. So given the fact that the amount this year is higher than what it was projected in the budget, this will actually give additional space to the government in terms of additional spending if it was to retain the fiscal deficit at 4.4%. So this additional spending could be anywhere above 50,000 crore to 70,000 crore. So in a year when there is geopolitical uncertainty, then there is so much amount of uncertainty and other things, I think this amount could actually act as a cushion for the government to spend in case if it is needed at a later point of time. And also the fact that I think this RBI dividend number actually will also help the government to smoothen out its budget numbers and allow it to continue on the glide path of the fiscal deficit. The government has projected the fiscal deficit at 4.4% in this year's budget. So let's see how that progression goes. It has already adhered to this target of FRBM target to bring it down below 4.5%. But let's see how the government progresses on the fiscal front in the next budget or so.
And do you think consumption will, going ahead, private investment is going to pick up, consumption will further pick up?
See, consumption has been given enough of a boost to pick up. The for most important thing for consumption is that the inflation is now at lower levels. So that actually boosts the purchasing power of the consumers. The government has also given a huge tax incentive in the budget, which is basically could add another 1 lakh on an average to taxpayer. So that's also a big amount. So my sense is that the government has already done enough on the consumption front. On the investment front, I think the story is a little bit of uncertainty, because there are sectors whereby the investor need to take a call of to invest or not, depending on how the global geopolitical conflict plays out. And there was also a survey recently by the CSO which showed that the private investment numbers were a little bit down than FY25 and FY26. But these are all intentions. Things could change in a span of time. But as of now, I think we need to watch out for the private investment on a more detailed basis, because that is where one thing which we need to worry about, if anything.
Do you think going ahead, there is more room, more scope to to reduce interest rate?
See, as of now, the RBI has made it clear that it has changed its stance to neutral. So it has said that the monetary policy has done enough to uplift growth. But my sense is that if the inflation trajectory plays out the way as we are projecting, maybe below 2.5% in June, maybe below closer to 2% by July, or even lower than that, assuming that all other things remain unchanged, I think then there could be space could open up for the RBI for rate adjustment towards the end of the year. But as of now, what it will be entirely, and RBI has clearly said that it will be data dependent. And as of now, I think it's entirely dependent on how the inflation actually moves forward. The good thing is that the inflation is moving forward quite well and will be within the band of 4 to 6% of the inflation target which the RBI is estimated. So from that point of view, if the numbers are favorable, then why not?
Thank you so much, Shomo. Wishing you all the best. Thank you so much.
Thank you.